It was a night like any other, the kind where the silence of the world outside felt almost palpable. I had settled into my usual routine, scrolling through Reddit, lost in the depths of various threads that ranged from the mundane to the utterly bizarre. I was no stranger to the darker corners of the internet, having spent countless hours reading true horror stories, urban legends, and the inexplicable experiences shared by users who claim to have encountered the supernatural. But that night, I stumbled upon 3 threads that would stay with me long after the screen went dark. The first thread that caught my attention was titled, "I think my neighbor is a serial killer." The author, a user named Creeped Out in the Suburbs, described a series of unsettling events that had unfolded over the course of several weeks. It began innocently enough. The author noticed that their neighbor, an unassuming man in his late 30s, had been acting strangely. At first, it was the odd hours he kept, coming and going at all times of the night. Then there were the strange noises emanating from his garage, a rhythmic thudding that seemed to echo through the stillness of the night. As the days passed, the author became increasingly uneasy. They detailed how they had begun to observe the man more closely, watching him through their window as he worked in his yard, seemingly oblivious to the eyes upon him. He would often disappear into the garage for hours, and when he emerged, he would be covered in what looked like dirt and grime. The author's concern turned to paranoia when they noticed that their neighbor had taken to burying something in the backyard, something large enough to raise suspicion. The thread quickly garnered attention, with users offering their theories and advice. Some suggested that the author should call the police, while others encouraged them to confront their neighbor directly. But the real horror unfolded in the comments. As more users chimed in, it became clear that this was not just a case of a quirky neighbor. "I live 2 doors down from him," one commenter revealed, "and I've seen him with a woman who hasn't been seen in weeks." The thread exploded with speculation, and as the hours passed, it became increasingly clear that the author was not alone in their fears. As the tension mounted, the original poster promised to keep everyone updated, but the updates never came. The last entry was a chilling one. "I think he knows I'm watching him." The thread faded into obscurity, but not before a user commented, "If you don't hear from me again, call the police." The second thread was equally unsettling, titled, "I found a hidden camera in my Airbnb." The author, a young woman traveling solo, recounted her experience of checking into what seemed like a charming little cottage in the woods. The first night went smoothly. She enjoyed the solitude and the serene ambiance. But on the second day, while unpacking her belongings, she stumbled upon a small hole in the wall, just big enough for a lens to peek through. Her heart raced as she realized what it might mean. She spent the next few hours searching the cottage, her paranoia building with every creak of the floorboards. She discovered several other suspicious spots, each more alarming than the last. The thread detailed her frantic efforts to find the hidden cameras, her fear escalating as she began to feel like she was being watched. The comments section erupted with advice on how to handle the situation, but the most chilling part was when someone posted, "If you found one camera, there are likely more." As she continued to investigate, she found herself in a state of heightened anxiety. She could feel the walls closing in on her, the very air thick with dread. The thread took a dark turn when she recounted her decision to leave the cottage immediately. She packed her bags and rushed to the door, only to find it locked from the outside. Panic set in as she realized she was trapped. The last update was a frantic plea for help, stating, "I can hear someone outside, they're trying to get in." The thread ended abruptly, leaving readers in a state of horror, wondering what had happened to her. The final thread that haunted me was titled, "I woke up to find my door open." The author, a man who lived alone, shared the chilling experience of waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of his front door creaking open. At first, he dismissed it as a figment of his imagination, a product of a restless night. But as he lay there, heart pounding, he realized he was not alone. The thread detailed his growing fear as he listened to the sounds of footsteps moving through his house. The unmistakable sound of someone, or something, treading lightly on the floorboards. He described the feeling of being paralyzed, unable to move or call for help. The sensation of being watched enveloped him, and he could feel the presence drawing closer. The comments section exploded with sympathy and advice, but the author's updates became more frantic as he recounted his attempts to confront whatever was in his home. He described how he finally mustered the courage to grab a baseball bat and creep down the hallway. The tension was palpable as he shared his every thought, every heartbeat, and every creak of the floor beneath him. The last update sent chills down my spine. He wrote, "I can see a shadow moving in the living room. I'm not alone." The thread ended there, and the silence that followed was deafening. Users flooded the comments, desperate for news, but there was none. The sense of dread hung heavy in the air, a reminder of how quickly safety could turn into terror. As I sat there, my heart racing and my mind swirling with the horrors I had just read, I couldn't shake the feeling that these threads were more than just stories. They were a glimpse into the darker side of humanity, a reminder of the fragility of our sense of security. The unsettling nature of these experiences lingered long after I closed my laptop, each thread intertwining in my mind, leaving me with an overwhelming sense of unease. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, checking the locks on my doors, and peering through the curtains to ensure that the world outside remained safely at bay. It was a stark realization that sometimes the scariest monsters are not those lurking in the shadows, but the very people we encounter in our everyday lives. The stories shared by those Reddit users became a part of me, a haunting reminder that fear often lies just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of paranoia that had settled over me. I found myself drawn back to the threads, rereading them, searching for any clues or insights that might explain the chilling conclusions they left behind. Each time I revisited those stories, the dread would creep back in, a visceral reminder of the unknown lurking just out of sight. I began to wonder about the lives of those who had shared their experiences. What had happened to the neighbor? Had the author of the hidden camera thread escaped? Or was she still trapped in that cottage, her pleas for help echoing in the void? And what of the man who had faced the shadow in his living room? The questions piled up, each one more unsettling than the last, and I realized that the true horror lay not in the stories themselves, but in the uncertainty of what had transpired after the final words were typed. As days turned into weeks, I found myself sharing the stories with friends, recounting the chilling details and the haunting conclusions. They listened, captivated and horrified, but I could see the flicker of fear in their eyes, a reflection of the unease that had taken root in my own heart. It was a shared experience, a bond forged in the fire of fear, and I couldn't help but wonder how many others had felt the same way after reading those threads. The world outside continued on, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lingered just beneath the surface. I became more vigilant, more aware of my surroundings, and I couldn't help but feel that the threads had awakened something within me. The stories served as a reminder that the line between safety and danger is often razor-thin, and that the most ordinary of lives can conceal the most extraordinary horrors. Eventually, I found solace in the idea that perhaps these stories were cautionary tales, lessons in vigilance and awareness. They urged us to look beyond the surface, to question the world around us, and to trust our instincts when something feels off. The threads had left an indelible mark on my psyche, a testament to the power of storytelling and the shared human experience of fear. In the end, as I lay in bed each night, I would often find myself glancing at the door, making sure it was locked tight. The shadows danced in the corners of my room, and I would remind myself that while the stories were unsettling, they were also a reflection of the resilience of the human spirit. We all have our fears, our monsters lurking in the dark, but it is in facing them that we find our strength. The threads may have faded from the forefront of my mind, but the lessons they imparted remained, woven into the fabric of my everyday life. I had witnessed the power of fear and the fragility of safety, and in that realization, I found a new appreciation for the ordinary moments that filled my days. The stories would always be there, a haunting reminder of the unknown, but they had also ignited a spark within me, a determination to embrace life, to seek out joy in the mundane, and to never forget the shadows that lurked just beyond the light.